Everything you need to know about products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on CL 650.
That's life.
That's life.
That's what all the people say.
Actually, what it is Strata.life here on CL 650. I'm George Gordon. Joining us in studio, Dan Hearn from Key Pacific Property Management and Gordon Lee of CMW Insurance. And we're talking today about the emergency. What happens when something happens to your particular unit or the building that you live in? What can you do to mitigate circumstances? What can you do to be prepared? Now, Dan and Gordon, let's talk about some of the really big issues. Water. It rains and something gets backed up, something gets cracked, and isn't that your biggest nightmare as a management company, a property management?
Yeah, I'm sure Gordon will agree. Water is probably the worst thing to...
Worse or fire, I don't know.
Well, at least
you either fire or water.
It's dry and it's done, right? But yeah, well, you get a fire and then you have lots of water damage too. That's the usual case. But yeah, water is always the issue. I mean, the most common one, if that's kind of what you're asking, is like water that's coming in from, you're on the third floor and there's water coming in through your ceiling, and you're not on the top floor, and so what's going on? And I think, as we mentioned earlier, that people have to understand. First of all, we encourage you to have insurance because the costs, you just don't know what they're going to amount to. Typically, a strata corporation has to mitigate damages. So a corporation is usually going to send in a restoration firm if they receive the call, and put an end to the leaking, and then start a drying process. And so that's up to the restoration process. But at that point, it also has to be evaluated, what really happened, what's the cause of this. And homeowners have to understand that, as we say, they may not have been negligent, but they may still have been responsible for the deductible on this. And if it's an issue that's just affecting two strata lots, a third floor and a second floor unit, and it's the guy's washing machine, technically the corporation doesn't even need to be involved. I mean, this is something between two homeowners, and I try to relate to it as kind of if a tree in a subdivision falls over and hits your neighbor, well, your neighbor's going to call in restoration company, get his roof fixed, but it was your tree, and if it was, should have been pruned back or whatever, you're going to be responsible for that damage. And the same thing happens in strata corporations. Corporations are there to maintain the common property, but if it's an issue just affecting two homeowners, that's their problem. And then homeowners don't always realize that they may be responsible for a pipe that's in the wall, even though they never even knew the pipe was there, but it may be part of their strata lot, and depending on what it's servicing, they may also be responsible for the water that escapes out of that, even though they didn't know they had it there. So these are some of the every building's a little bit unique, and so when we know a building, we can bring this to the attention of the homeowners. But every building's got unique situations.
And I would think that people who have just spent money to move in, and they think they're covered, right? We've got earthquake insurance. We're good. Something happens, we don't have to worry about a thing. And then the next thing, there's something happens up on the 10th floor. Maybe you down on the third didn't get it, but everybody, in the floors in between were impacted. And now the strata has to deal with part of that costs, and all of a sudden you're faced with a big assessment, and it's like, wait a minute. And that's why you need to know as an individual, I suppose, that where am I covered and what do I need to do to protect myself?
Some of the water damage claims can be $100,000 deductibles, right?
Yes.
And an earthquake is even more dramatic than that.
Yes, by far more. Like I said, you take a building that's $10 million, and that's not a very big strata these days. 10% deductible, that's $1 million, and that the strata corporation will be, they won't be billed for the $1 million. What generally happens in those cases is that the contractor restoration company called in to do the work will say, you have a 10% deductible. So, when we ask them what would happen in an earthquake, those restoration all will say, we will need to collect the $10 million or the $1 million first before we start work. So then the strata corporation, Dan, I guess, is
Yeah.
Would they have that in contingency?
Not normally. I mean, most people want to run pretty lean, right? So you don't usually have a budget to pay a major deductible like that. Even a water deductible of $100,000 may be crippling for a corporation. So now you end up going to special general meetings, calling a special levy, and then it's divided up by a unit entitlement. And for some people, it could be $500, it could be $5,000, $15,000, and if you just squeak in, you bought this home and you're really cognizant of costs and you don't have high maintenance fees, you probably didn't budget. You don't have $5,000 you can write a check on, and so that's, again, you can have a homeowner's policy that would help you out with that. Right?
Yeah, and I think on the earthquake side, then I think most of these, when I looked at it, when we underwrite the building and get the information, most of these stratas, like a $10 million strata, will be probably about 30 units, depending on the size. And when you divvy up that deductible, I think most unit owners came in somewhere between like $20,000 up to about $40,000, depending on the size of units or things like that. So that's a heck of a lot of money. And I think, that's another beauty of if you have the proper homeowners insurance for your own content, you can get some of that, if not all of that, covered off, which is significant.
Mm-hmm. Dan, I would also think that from a strata point of view, from the corporation, from the managing body, if you will, that it's important that everybody in the building understand that they have to take responsibility and care for them. If it's something that somebody hits the water sprinkler with a basketball and it doesn't have a little cage over top, and it's like, okay, well, this is going to be a strata issue. We'll have a special assessment. Oh, and by the way, the deductible now has gone up, because this is every time you have the payout from an insurance company, wouldn't they have to come back to you and say, we have to reassess what we're charging you and what, and certainly what the deductible would be, and your premiums and so on.
I think that happens. I mean, Gordon's CMW has been pretty good. I think every claim doesn't necessarily equate to an increase in premiums the next year, but if you have a building where people are continuously using those sprinkler heads to hang up clothes,
or just poor maintained or poorly managed buildings, which I know you probably don't see much of those because
not my buildings,
right? but it does, I mean, you see when the pipes needs to be done, and it's the people are just refusing to do it, or just bad luck, and you get a high frequency of, say, water damage claims. So there's nothing really the insurance company can do except pay the claim, and most people try not to increase the rate so much because they can't really recover. But so what they do is manage to say, until the pipes are done, we're going to have this higher deductible, and that's where these deductibles, I've seen them go up to like $250,000.
Ouch!
Where
Can we just wrap up this segment and just talk about some of the good things that you've seen done by Strata? What, in being prepared, you've talked about some of the mistakes that are made, some of the lack of thought. Give me a couple of bullet points that if you're going into a Strata, what should be done?
That they're doing right now, or that we encourage them to do?
That you've seen that they're doing right.
Well, I mean, I love council members. We respect that they put in a lot of time and effort, and every few corporations have real gem council members that are awesome volunteers, and I think that I think what corporations are doing right is trying to recruit people who are giving it their best to be council members, and looking at the interest of the building as opposed to their own personal interest. And the number one thing is adequate budgets, right? And there's some that are doing that well.
All right. We're going to be back in a moment with Strata.life on CL 650, all part of our Experts on Call series. And we'll be back with Dan Hearn from Key Pacific Property Management, Gordon Lee of CMW Insurance. We're going to make sure that we get you their contact points when we come back. And if you have feedback or ideas, you can send them to questions@strata.life. This is George Gordon, and this is CL 650.
There's still more ahead with Experts on Call on CL 650.